The Great Gospel of John, revealed from the Lord through the inner word to Jacob Lorber. Prediction of the Lord, instruction at all times, churches and antichrists. Volume 6, chapters 149 to 151. Chapter 149, a prediction of the Lord on our present time, the necessity of divine revelations. The Lord says, Said I, Friend, as it stands now, it will be the same near the 2,000 years after us, and the beginning for it will start already much earlier. Here, the Jewish faith is now much worse than heathendom, since with the heathens reason still counts for something, while trampled on with the feet by the Jews. In those times, however, my teaching. Thus, Christianity will be much worse than the Jewish faith and heathenism together. There will be a great hardship among the people. The light of the true living faith will extinguish and love will totally cool off. The haughtiness of the well-off people will exceed all boundaries, and the rulers and priests will regard themselves as much higher as the Jews, their unknown Jehovah, and the heathens their Zeus. But then I will from time to time awaken men and maidens and give them the right light, and this light will increasingly become greater and mightier, and in the end devour all the works of the great whore of Babel. Thus do not be surprised that it is light now, because quite often already it was worse, and one day it still will become worse. The world will always stay world. Nevertheless, I always will guide those who belong to me and unleash my judgment over the world when it has become so bad that next to its activities, no spark of the true lifelight can exist anymore. Now it has gotten to such a point that in the whole Jewish country, without John and without me, every spark of the true God recognition would have been suffocated, and it was therefore necessary that I myself came into this world, to again bring the lost light of life to all people who still have a good will, and show them anew the ways to true God recognition. There will, of course, still some battles be fought between my children and the children of the world, because the number of mine on earth will always be smaller than the children of the world. Nevertheless, in the end, mine will win over all the world, and it will not be able to harm them anymore. Even if all matter seems indestructibly hard for you, it finally has to give way before the power of the Spirit. God alone is Lord over everything and knows it best what, how, and why He allows and instructs the one and the other to happen. When to pour out the right light among the people and maintains it in all seriousness among His children, so that nobody can say, if there existed an all-wise God who has created everything which fills endless space, He must have had a lot of insight combined with love, so that He at least reveals and shows that much to His reasonable and thinking creatures, the people, that they could infer from it that He is the true reason of all things, and what man has to expect from Him, and how they have to live that such expectations can be realized at them. If God would never and in no manner reveal Himself to man, man would have the full right not to believe in any God, and every person who says out of himself that nevertheless there exists a God, or even more than one invisible gods, to knock him down and say, what does your stupid fantasy God concern us? If there is one, He should show Himself to us and tell us what He wants from us. If He does not do this, He in all truth does not exist anywhere, except in the lazy imagination of a mud lounger. A of himself fully conscious God as a central point of all wisdom and power must reasonably consider man as his most perfect creation insofar that at some stage He must reveal Himself, and must show them why they are there and what are His further plans with them. However, if this is not the case, and if according to the fullest truth it cannot be proved that He once, or more than once, has been present, He does not exist. And whoever speaks and writes of the existence of God deserves to be sharply punished. because it is sufficient that man gifted with all reason and insight, and only too clearly conscious of himself, must carry all the most outrageous loads of a life, which he cannot be blamed for, not to mention that he for nothing and again nothing has to follow hard all nature-opposing laws, prescribed to him by a nowhere existing God, for a God who cannot reveal himself to the people other than by the tongue of a mad and work-shy fool, or being only a raw, stupid and blind power, which only possesses that much self-consciousness and reason that it, without disgrace of being laughed at, can only dare to reveal itself in all secrecy to a very stupid, all knowledge bare, not understanding anything, gullible fool. See, every reasonable person would be entitled to draw such conclusions about the Godhead, if the Godhead would never show and reveal itself to man other than by way of the lazy and non-worthy priesthood. But let's go back to Adam, and we will find many subsequent time periods in which God before 1,000 times 1,000 people has revealed himself in the most unforgettable manner and informed man about his will and his most wise purpose with man. But because man would not be man at all, if not allowing him the freest will, man proceeded with the divine word, not one hair differently than with the word of a person. A small portion still followed for some time the will of God, but the biggest part soon forgot about it completely, and finally regarded everything as a futile invention and blather of man, and enjoyed the world joys to the fullest, and regarded the wise as fools and utopians, who, because of a highly uncertain and unprovable kingdom of heaven in the beyond, tread the true kingdom of this world with their feet. Through such views, faith in a God was on the one hand lost altogether, and this even more so because on the other hand, the lazy priesthood, through its selfish falsification of the revealed word of God, in time made the sober and ripe thinking people become aware that with such revealed words of God, as offered by the priests, man was even less satisfied than even the most stupid person on earth could expect. In the original writings of Lorber, there exists some confusion about the composition of the last part of the sentence. Here, the understanding of the translator is given. The teachings were a bundle of highly incomprehensible secrets, which nevertheless were regarded by the blind people as sacred, and who regarded themselves as highly unworthy to understand such high, deep, and holiest secrets. Or is it different today? Do not the stupid, blind people go to the temple and worship the scriptures? However, of its contents they know only a little or nothing, and also do not have any need, because they are satisfied thereby that this is already understood by the consecrated priest, and the common man does not need anything else than what the priest is telling him, and that he does what the priest wants, since the priest surely knows why. If this is the way the revealed word and will of God is handled by mankind, it is no wonder that man, already 100 years after even the biggest revelation of the truth, hardly knows and believes more than sleeping children know what they have done during their awakened state. Nevertheless, God never desists from revealing himself to the people in manifold ways, so that man, by just thinking a little about it, soon can discover that things did not happen according to natural means. Chapter 150. True and False Prophets and Revelations. The Lord. To the biggest part, God reveals himself through the mouth of fully awakened prophets. Such prophets are always recognizable for the awakened person. Firstly, by their written and spoken word, secondly, by some miracle activity additions. For example, that they in an emergency can tell people future occurrences in advance, so that the people can take note of it and better themselves and ask God to stop the announced judgment of happening, as it was the case with Nineveh. Thirdly, such real awakened prophets, by the will of God, can also heal the sick through their prayers and by laying on of their hands, if the healing promotes the soul salvation of the sick. And fourthly, they are also able, combined with the will of God, to bring a judgment over incorrigible mankind, and on the contrary also bless a nation. Through such and several other properties, they are properly marked as real prophets awakened by God, and can be easily distinguished from false prophets, especially easy thereby that they, as true prophets, are always full of humility and love for their neighbor, while the false prophets walk in all kinds of decorated, and by other things marked clothes, are full of haughtiness and full of the most outrageous selfishness, only by visible at certain holy places, speak very little, and this very stupid and senseless, and at certain times perform false miracles, by, of course, means kept very secret. And woe him who tried to copy them, while the real prophet does not keep his true miracles a secret, but on top encourages people that they in the same true and good manner also can perform the same miracles. Since thereby the true prophets can easily be distinguished from the false, and every sober person can recognize from this that there, in all seriousness, exist true and false prophets, where the latter never would have existed if the true prophets would not have been there first. The people also can easily infer from that a true God exists, who never will let the people walking around on earth as complete orphans, but also make his will known to them and reveals his great and wise purpose to them. This type of revelation is for man who wants to take note of it, the most salutary, because thereby they are not coerced in any extraordinary manner. By the only seldom occurring large revelations, the people yield for their souls much less, because such revelations are more of a judgment for degenerated mankind than it is any salvation for them. When Adam was sinning before God in paradise, by not accepting the well-recognized will of God with his free will, he soon experienced a great revelation by God and regretted his sin. However, this large revelation was a judgment for him. Afterwards, several large revelations of God were given to the degenerated children of the world who lived in the lowlands. However, this always was a judgment for the children of the world. See The Household of God, Volume 3 by Jacob Lorber. During the times of Noah, again a large revelation came to man, but it was a very large judgment for mankind. In the times of Abraham, again a large revelation occurred, namely because of the terribly degenerated inhabitants of Sodom, Gomorrah, and the 10 smaller towns surrounding these 2 big cities. It again was a judgment for the people. The Dead Sea is still today a speaking testimony of it. Father Jacob again had a large revelation from God. However, his children had to suffer for it in Egypt. During the times of Moses, there was an exceedingly large revelation of God, and the thundering words of God to the people had to be engraved in stone boards. However, what terrible judgment was this revelation of God, especially for the Egyptians becoming too blind, too haughty, and too inhuman, whose magnificence was thereby completely broken. But also the Israelites were not overlooked. When the Israelites left the desert under Joshua, again a great revelation of God took place, and the big Jericho disappeared from the earth. The same occurred at the times of Samuel and Elijah, and also during the times of the other large prophets. And look it up, the judgments which followed. Even the smaller prophets were not sent into this world without judgments. But now, the biggest and most direct revelation of God to the people occurs before your eyes. However, the subsequent exceedingly large judgment for the Jews will not have to wait for very long. From now on, for nearly 2,000 years, countless many seers and prophets will be awakened, while at the same time an even bigger number of false prophets and even highly haughty, power-hungry, and all love-bare false Christs will rise. But also the judgments will continue, and there will seldom be a ruler who, because of his darkness, will not together with his people have to endure a severe judgment. towards the end of the indicated period, I will awaken even bigger prophets, and with them also the judgments will increase and become more widespread. There will occur great earthquakes and very destructible storms of elements. Prices will increase, wars, famine, pestilence, and many other disasters. And, as I have already remarked earlier, faith will, except for a very few, not be among the people, and will be frozen in the ice of the people's haughtiness, and one nation will attack the other. The people will be warned through seers and special signs in the sky, of which only a few of mine will take note of, while the world people will only regard this as effects of nature, and spit on those who still believe in me. Thereupon, the greatest revelation through my repeated return to this earth will take place. But this revelation will already be preempted by the greatest and sharpest judgment, and be followed by a general thinning of the world people through fire and its projectiles, so that I myself can establish a completely different plant school for true people on this earth, which then will last until the end of times on this earth. I now say this to you in advance, that you certainly should not be of the opinion that after me it will be perfect like in my heavens. Yes, very few will be equal to my angels, but many, even a lot worse than are the people during these our times. Despite all this, you should not become annoyed about this, because I already have told you many times that man without his free will is not man at all, but only a human-like animal. In the best case, one could train such people like animals for a certain activity, but never place them on the level that they recognize that such work for the true person and for the animal people are good and useful, so that they then decide for themselves to perform such useful work at the right time. Man who sins against the law thereby also shows that he is a free man, just like the one who follows the law voluntarily. Therefore, you should not judge and condemn any person, but only teach him with all patience and gentleness, and show the lost the right way. If he wants to walk on it, it is indeed good for him. However, if he does not want to do it, you therefore should not coerce him in any way, but in the worst case, ban him from a better and purer society, since a coerced believing person is 10 times worse than an open unbeliever and apostate. Look at the Pharisees. They are all coerced believers for pretense. However, in themselves they do not believe anything and do whatever they have a desire for. Therefore, be careful if you, in my name, choose successors for you, that you firstly, under no circumstances, force someone, and secondly, do not accept someone where you concede already from a distance that he wants to step into your office only for a temporary interest. You will take care of such indeed. However, nonetheless, countless will take your office, partially through outer compulsion and partly through the prospect to find a good and carefree life in your office. However, all these will be counted by me to the regiment of the Antichrist, and their works will cause a disgusting smell and look like a stinking cadaver before God. Verily, I say to you, all your successors who are not prepared by me, but trained only by people in certain world schools to follow your office, will not be looked at by me, since only the Antichrist will qualify his disciples in this way. Those whom you will lay your hands on and baptize them in my name will be filled with my Spirit. It is them who I myself at all times will choose as your successors, and will confirm them by the true granting of my Spirit. However, during later times there will be only a few, because the Antichrist will expand his regiment too much. But when he thinks to be the highest in the world, he will be brought down forever. Have you understood this well and clear? Chapter 151. The Marks of the Anti-Christians. Said thereupon John as my favorite, Lord, then it is hardly worthwhile the trouble to make such efforts for the sake of the silly people. since when your most brightest light given to the people only too soon darkens again through the always victorious efforts of Satan, then he should take the people as they are now, thus completely ripe for his hellish kingdom. Why should these people first be endowed with your light? Truly, if this will be the fruits of your divine teaching, it means if one wanted to teach the world people you are teaching, to throw your life pearls to all the pigs of the world as common grub, one should not give to them the noble stuff, hence they will not be able to spoil and impurify it. Said I, yes, my friend, for the sake of those people who do not believe in it what they might hear about my teaching, and falsify it for worldly profit, the teaching of life from me is not given, since for the soul of such people and their possible and further development, I still have endless many and large schoolhouses in the whole of infinity. Only for the true children on this earth I give this teaching, and they are also included in the true redemption from everlasting death. However, they also will always maintain this teaching as purified and will never be subject to world deception, but they will stick to the everlasting life truths. Why do we care about all the worldly people? The opportunity is given to them to also step into the rows of the children of God. If they want to do this seriously, they should not be hindered to do so. And if they don't, they should do what they want, and you have not to worry about them any longer. See, this is the way things stand, for I have not come to free the world from its old judgment fetters, but only to free my children from the world and its judgment. And what and how I do it now, subsequently you and your successors will do it likewise. And what on this earth must be solved according to my order, you also will have to solve. And what you will solve will also be solved immediately with me in heaven. However, what cannot be solved, leave it bound, or if someone does not want to observe it, leave him in his fetters and bind him, so that you are not bothered by the bound. And verily I say to you, he will also be bound in heaven by me, and for a very long time remain a slave of his dark world will. See, this is how things are. Said John further, but how will we recognize such dark antichrists? Because this I can see quite clearly now, that your teaching will be taken up by many, especially by the magicians, who will beautify their magic by it. Oh, just tell us also the distinguishing signs, so that we can recognize them quickly and immediately start to fight them. Said I, you will easily recognize them in their works, since no grapes grow on thorns and no figs on thistles. Who gives something and wants to take more in return is truly not my disciple. Since, see, I give everything for those who are mine, finally even the life of this my body, and in return take from no one a sacrifice of this world, but only one that a person must love me above all, so that I can give him even endlessly more and greater things. Do you think the Antichrist will do the same? Oh, certainly not. He will give his followers dreadfully little, like perhaps nothing else than empty, fictitious promises of the great beyond, but in return will ask for large efforts, like done now by the clerics, who are getting paid for their several feet-long prayers. However, these prayers are of no use to anyone, not for this world, nor the beyond. And see, exactly the same the Antichrist will do, and mine will recognize him and his disciples and followers quite easily by these trifle and hollow fruits. What are the Pharisees doing right now with sinners of all kinds and types? See, they take a sin offer, either as money or as other kinds of rich offers, and thereupon give the sinners a free pass for the already committed sins, and also for those sins which a person, of which there are plenty, especially in the rich world, contemplate to commit in the future, and tell the people, it is better for you to sacrifice if you cannot keep the law. And in this way, the clerics lift the laws of God and instead promulgate their selfish worldly rules, for their sole purpose is a good life at the expense of poor, blind mankind. See, the Antichrist and all his disciples will do it precisely in this way, and you will recognize them by this even more easily. And if his disciples in all the world will shout with open mouths, "Look, here is the true Christ," or "There he is," such a thing will not be believed by any of my disciples. However, leave the true children of the world, and do not call them, so that you may have peace from the dragon and its followers. Because for some time he will appropriate large powers to himself and will treat his enemies quite badly, but by this he will prepare his own judgment and downfall. During the time, I will allow the people to make great inventions, which, like glowing arrows, will penetrate the dark chambers of the dragon, which will destroy his wretched deceiving arts and his false wonder-works. And he will be standing naked even in front of his most fierce followers, who will soon turn away from him in large crowds. Therefore, you should not worry what will become of my teaching in time, since I alone know all the things which have to take place in this world and what must be allowed, so that one day it will become bright in the blind world. However, it will not happen as quickly as you think, since I alone know the life elements of this earth, and also know best what it takes to lead them to a higher life light in time. Therefore, do not ask any further, and be of cheerful courage. See, there are still quite peculiar and wretched events waiting for me in this world, which will actually not have to wait for very long. Because of it, you will not have noticed any sadness in me. Whatever happens may happen. I alone am the Lord. Nothing can happen without my wisdom and my will. Whatever happens and is still going to happen is calculated and directed from above and has its deepest holy reason. However, whoever is with me in the heart, love and will, no worldly harm will ever come his way. However, whoever is only with me in wisdom will have to endure many evil battles in the world. Since the world, in its material sense, never recognizes that its apparent something is actually nothing before the spirit. Be content with this and have a completely cheerful disposition with me.